Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining so promptly, those of you who have. For those of you based outside of the UK or elsewhere, I hope the weather is better than it is here because it's mightily depressing right now. Although I've just heard that we made it through Blue Monday, which apparently yesterday was the most depressing day of the year. So it can only get better from here on up, right? So a very warm welcome wherever you are in the world. Delighted to have so many of you joining the session today. So quick introductions. You know me because you can see me on the video. That's a photo of me when I had a better haircut, not in lockdown. And well, it wasn't that great then either. But you know me, Rob, and my colleague Hannah, who will be professionally managing this webinar as ever. But our guest speaker star, if you like, of today is Christoph. He's from independent research agency Latana. But before we hand over to Christoph, just a few words of context as ever. For those of you who are new to the WFA and glancing at the names, there seem to be one or two. For those of you who aren't, thanks for your patience. We were founded in 1953 as a network of national advertiser associations, and we're now proud to have 60 country members now. And I noticed Manuela from APAN in Portugal joined. Hi, Manuela, and I'm sure some others. But those are in addition to the now 125 company members that we have, just client side only, so no agencies, no media owners or platforms. But you can see the two types of members combined here in front of you. So wherever you're from, a very warm welcome to you. So on to the topic and why now. Now, I think it's fair to say that most of us came into marketing to create rather than destroy things. And I think whilst there's many sort of facets to sustainability, and it's 17, in fact, as we're going to touch on during this session, as defined by the United Nations. I think by joining this session, I suspect you agree that sustainability encompasses the biggest battles that we're facing today. And the truth is that our industry, the marketing and advertising industry, is often viewed as an enemy, if you like, of sustainable future. So as communicated here, as you can see, if you remember, Extinction Rebellion turned up at Cannes Lions when the last time they met there in person. But whilst marketing has been traditionally viewed as part of the problem, we think there's an opportunity for our industry to be part of the solution. And as it stands, most of our member companies and organizations have given a great deal of thought to sustainability in terms of their businesses overall, but the same can really be said in relation to their marketing function. So some of you might have seen last year, we ran a project called Marketer of the Future. And when we asked our 683 marketers around the world, with the help of our national associations, we asked, what roles were you focused on? And we gave them a list. And as you can see at the fairly low down here, sustainability on just 37%. But when we asked them to look 5 years ahead in terms of what's going to become more important, actually you see sustainability jumps to the top. Certainly something that's on the rise from our members and that sample's perspective. But then when you specifically asked our members, and again, we presented these in the WFA in 2021 session last week, you would have seen these priorities from our senior marketers specifically. Now, the top priorities, effectiveness and efficiency, tend to be very consistent year on year. But sustainability and marketing has been a notable addition that we included as a prompted option that really jumped into the top 10. So quite encouraging, I think, to see in terms of how much of a priority it is for our brand owner members. Well, one of the key drivers, of course, of this, we think, has been the pandemic. We did a COVID brand response tracker last year, and 81% of you said that you agreed that the crisis has proven that brands have an important role to play in wider society. So there is recognition amongst the brand owner community that change is needed. So we've been busy in the process of creating a new leadership initiative around sustainability and marketing, working with an organization called Project 17. They are a great group of people who have helped the United Nations position and market their sustainable development goals, actually. But you may know Gail Galley, who leads the team. You can find out about her actually during our Global Marketer Week. I've put a URL at the bottom there if you're interested to join. It's free for WFA members. But in addition to that, as a part of that sustainability and marketing work, we've also, with my colleague Will Gilroy, created the white paper that you can see in front of you here now. You may have received this in December in your inbox. If not, you can download it from our site. So that just as a little bit of context. And finally, to say that our thinking in this area has really been driven by, and I always have to include a shameless name dropping slide, but really wanted to say thank you to these members who've been involved. We've done the qualitative interviews with them already, some really fascinating insights, which has helped to frame the study and the project that we're working on. And when we've been doing this project, the first stage was also looking at the excellent work that's already been done. There's a lot of reports around sustainability, as you can imagine, and one of them we came across was from Latana. And really, as I said, something we've found to be incredibly useful. But before I hand over to Christoph to tell you more about it, we thought it would be nice to get a little bit of a sense of the perceived sort of maturity, if you like, and I don't mean that at all in a patronizing way, of our audience today when it comes to linking sustainability to your marketing efforts. So Hannah has put up a quick poll here. So the question is, how far along are you in terms of applying your company's sustainability agenda specifically to your marketing function? So for example, communicating about sustainability. Hopefully, Hannah, we've got a decent sample. There you go. Lovely. So 47% taking the first steps in the journey. And this is very, very close. We ran a session earlier on, so morning our time in the UK, for our colleagues in Asia as well. And actually the results, I think, Hannah, were almost exactly the same as that, but certainly first steps in the journey was the largest percentage, almost 50% saying that. So encouraging to see 34% progressing well, and very few, 6% saying we don't and we have no plans to. So hopefully for that 6%, you'll still find this spotlight to be interesting. But thanks, Hannah. Right, so as I said, Latana's work has already been super useful to us. The Sustainability Perception Index, which Christoph is going to focus on today, we found fascinating, and we didn't see any reason to keep this to ourselves. So Christoph kindly agreed to join our spotlight and share with you all. So our guest speaker is the program lead sustainability and innovation, I believe, at Latana. So he's new to the WFA, so I'll ask you to please be gentle with him. But Christoph, joking aside, warm welcome to the WFA. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. It's nice to meet you, everyone, even virtually. Greetings from Berlin. My name is Christoph, and before diving into the actual insights that I want to share and the story behind that, I want to take the opportunity to quickly set the expectations for this talk, because it's proven helpful to set the expectations so that they are easier to be met in the actual presentation. So this is not a presentation about what is sustainability, what does it entail. It's not a presentation about why it is important for the planet. It's not a presentation about why it's important for its people. And it's in particular not a presentation how your own company or the company you work for can become more sustainable. In fact, it's a presentation about what people consider being sustainable, what they think, why it's important, if they think it's important, who actually thinks so, and then how are brands perceived in terms of sustainability. So everything that I share is based on public opinion and the opinions of people around the world. And this is something that Latana is very good at, to really capture the ideas, thoughts, and impressions of people around the world. So again, this is not a presentation about scientific facts. It's about consumer perception, relevance, and thoughts. And yeah, please allow me that little pun. We are here at the World Federation of Advertisers, so I'm sure you know the difference between the two. As I mentioned, Latana is kind of an independent research agency. What we are primarily identify ourselves with is a tech company in the realm of market research. Our prime product is an AI-powered brand tracking tool where we help companies understand the impact of their brands and their brand performance against competitors with a very sophisticated tech-driven approach covering around 80 countries around the world. So if that's something that is interesting to you, we can talk about this separately. Today, we want to talk about our work in the realm of sustainability, where we help companies steer their sustainability initiatives and their sustainability agenda with a consumer-led approach. So we help them understand the preferences of people around the world and their buyers, essentially, to help them keep track of these preferences and then steer change in these organizations. We're working with a series of companies together on sustainability and also other, shameless name dropping, referring to that, Rob. And my name is Christoph. I'm working in our sustainability program and responsible for a couple of other innovation topics at Latana as well. Living and working and also calling in today from Berlin. If you hear some weird sounds in the background, that's probably my dog, Paul, not my wife. And if you're not so much interested in sustainability, we can also talk about a couple of other topics as well. And I'm really looking forward to the exchange. So let's get going. What do we mean by a consumer-led sustainability strategy? When we started at Latana talking about sustainability, we did some proper research ourselves. So we talked to the people who were in charge of sustainability programs in companies large and small. And what we were really surprised to find out is that the departments or the teams or the responsibilities who defined the sustainability agenda of companies was primarily the Department of Financial Risk or Financial Risk Mitigation, and also legal requirements, legislation, regulation, etc. And our impression was that in an ideal world that was driven by idealism, the sustainability agenda should be defined by the external effects of an organization or company on the people, on the planet, and the people who live on the planet. And if we read the news, if we look out of the window, I think we can all agree that this triangle has been a bit off balance. So for many years, many companies have put less effort or conscious effort on the external effects that these companies have. And what happened over the past years is that the expectations of informed consumers have incredibly put attention to these external effects that companies have. And these expectations have just grown rapidly over the last couple of years. I'm not only referring to Fridays for Future, I'm referring to all kinds of initiatives that people run, raising concerns and raising awareness for disadvantaged groups, for things that happen to the environment. And it's just ever increasing in terms of relevance for consumers. And what we see is that these increased expectations of consumers have had an effect on this triangle. So by raising awareness for these external effects that companies and organizations and just our economy has on people and the planet, they've put pressure on the legislation, on political decision makers, onto companies, onto the financial markets, because basically these informed these informed consumers, they decide with their wallet, they decide with their votes, they decide how they spend their time, their attention, what they care about, and thereby we think that these expectations of consumers deserve a prime role in the considerations about the sustainability strategy of an organization. And obviously, not surprisingly, that's something that we are very good at, understanding the needs and desires and expectations of consumers around the world. And that's the foundation of the talk that I'm giving today. We asked people around the world about their expectations, about their brand perception, what they think is important in terms of sustainability. And I want to share a bit about those insights that we collected over the past 1.5 years with you. I'm happy to guide you through that. In all the research that we run across the world, we could basically confirm data that you probably know already. So 2/3 of respondents, no matter where we look at, say that sustainability is important to them. So it is present in people's minds already. Every second respondent says that he is willing to pay more for sustainable products. Okay, we've heard that a lot. Hard to, in detail, really validate that. All right, but our friends and partners from the NYU Stern Center for Sustainable Business have confirmed that actually consumer packaged goods that are seen as sustainable outperform unsustainable alternatives by a factor of 6. So that's really validated data in the market. So what we see is that people not only care about sustainability already, but they are already voting with their wallets. And making these kind of products growing much faster than the average consumer packaged goods. So it is important already, and in addition to that, we are very, very certain, and that's actually reflected in the data that Rob presented among the marketers as well. The importance of sustainability will only grow over the next couple of years, and we see data that supports this from three different angles. One is that the youth in general is way more strict with brands, with companies, but also in their general consumer and purchasing behavior. So just comparing this statement, I would not buy from a brand I knew to be acting in a non-sustainable way. 44% of the old people, of the other part of the population that we asked, said they support this statement, but more than 50% of the young do that. So they are way more strict in their behavior towards brand. Second, the fast-growing economies, the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they overproportionately report that sustainability is important to them. Comparing the industrialized world against the BRICS countries, there is a significant difference, and our interpretation of that is that especially in the Southern Hemisphere, in the Global South, the actual implications and results of climate change and other sustainability issues are way more perceptible and have a way stronger influence on the daily lives of these people already. So this is reflected in the data as well. And the third one, and I think this was referred to as well with the COVID-19 pandemic, we call this the post-corona effect, where we see that more than 60% of the general population expect sustainability to be more important after the pandemic than before. And this is even higher when only looking at those whose income has been decreased by the pandemic. So if there is public debate or political debate, whether it's rebuilding or recovering the economy versus building a sustainable future, those whose income has been affected, they are overproportionately expecting sustainability to be higher. You probably, as I said, we are dialing in from Berlin today. I'm dialing in from Berlin, and we've seen during the pandemic, with the lockdown measures and everything, we have seen stars again in the capital of a highly industrialized country. This hasn't been there in ages. You might have seen the reports from the dolphins getting back to the Bay of Venice. So these are all things that people could perceive, and this the pandemic has kind of put a pause on lots of many activities. And yeah, people had time to rethink, and we really see that this is the expectation for the future moving forward. You know the concept of sustainability, and I told you that I will not go into this in detail. We have the 17...
Christoph, just one quick question, sorry, before you go on. One of our members asking if that data in the last slide was from Latana. Was it proprietary research or from a different source, the previous slide?
This is our own data, and this is true for, if not mentioned otherwise, it's our own data.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. You know the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. You probably know of the 3 pillars of sustainability: environmental, social, and governance. And we found that companies are typically quite good at taking care of the governance part themselves. So our research primarily focuses on environmental and social issues. Social and environmental, even this is has a very diverse meaning looking around the world. So this is just an example of what people understand under the term of being environmentally sustainable. And you see some these arrows point to the countries where certain items were very highly overrepresented in these countries. So in China, very overrepresented is the item that it's actually environmentally sustainable if you reduce pollution of air and water. In Indonesia, it's reducing plastic waste. In India, it's reducing the water usage because droughts are a prime issue there. Almost stereotypical in Sweden and also in the Netherlands, it was about creating long-lasting products. In Brazil, and you remember the Amazon rainforest fires and the massive deforestation that is still accelerating. Preventing deforestation is one of the prime issues for people in Brazil. And in the US, it's also quite stereotypical in a way. It's people consider identifying and defining new ways to help maintain the planet. So the sense of entrepreneurship is actually reflected even in the meaning of being environmentally sustainable. what we see is that people, when it comes not only, okay, what does it mean, but what are the sustainability issues that are important to you, not in social and environmental, because that's really, really abstract, but when it comes to very tangible issues of social and environmental sustainability, asking them about what is most important to them, it feels like covering the basics is obviously the prime driver. So made without child labor, animal cruelty free is something that we've seen rising over the past couple of years dramatically. Made without harmful chemicals, etc. So these are the things that people can really relate to. And what we see is that environmental topics drive purchasing decisions. So if a consumer, or maybe it's envision yourself being in the store, and you want to buy, I don't know, certain item, and you have two options in terms. One is you see is rather sustainable, and the other one doesn't have that claim. What we find is that the sustainability topics then drive the purchasing decision towards the more sustainable option primarily. But when it comes to these social topics like child labor, animal cruelty free, and in general how companies deal with people in a way, we see that this impacts the brand reputation in the long term. And I will showcase a few examples later when we talk about the brand perception. But this is something that we could definitely see in the data, that environmental topics, environmental sustainability topic give the nudge towards a certain product, but social sustainability topics really sticks way stronger and way more long term to the brand reputation as well. Another topic that I'd like to shed light on is the expectations on certain sustainability-related, kind of features or claims, as I described earlier, based on sustainability-related attitudes of people. So how much do they know about sustainability? Do they care? Do they think it's kind of cool? Do they think it's important? And based on a variety of those segmentation variables, we have created with our data science team a set of sustainability, we call them sustainability audiences. Obviously, each of them is an alliteration because that's just how we do it. And what we basically found in our data is that there are very few people, and actually not a in itself coherent group, that actively rejects the idea of sustainability. That's just not an issue. So there is a varying degree from I don't think I don't think it's super important to yes, I think it's really important, but there are no active rejectors. Based on this type of coolness of sustainability and whether that's like a hip and trendy thing, that's like the second main dimension. Based on that, we could identify those four audiences. So where the enthusiastic expert is really someone who, I know, reads the ingredients, he really knows the impact of certain things on the environment, he knows actively what he or she can do to reduce their sustainability or their carbon footprint. The inspired innovator is more the type of person who is actively engaging with brand content, where sustainability is now basically a hip topic that has recently come up, but not so much driven because of idealism, but really because it's a lifestyle statement in a way. The considerate conventionalist is the type of person who you can, basically the average person, I would say, the average consumer, whereas the reserved rationalist is more like really skeptical whether this is really a thing. Again, not actively rejecting, but really, really skeptic. And what we see when we look at these four groups is that they put emphasis on different types of sustainability features. So as an example, I want to showcase this also from data that we collected in several countries. Certain sustainability features or product claims like plastic-free packaging, made with sustainably sourced materials, and like from a product and engineering and manufacturing point of view, the most challenging one, made from 100% recycled materials. We see that the kind of importance that the different groups put on these kind of features very strongly based on the experience and the knowledge with the topic of sustainability overall. So that plastic-free packaging is kind of okay, same importance for everyone, but the higher the request and the expectations are, the stronger the difference between the less informed to the more informed respondents. So what we see, and that is obviously true for many, many product characteristics as well, but the more knowledgeable the consumers are, the higher their expectations in terms of sustainability. So the question for brands is really whether it's for them a challenge to meet these kinds of expectations, or actually an opportunity to stand out for this customer segment that is willing to that is willing to invest more and that is willing to also inform themselves, and also to be strict and buy products that are not sustainable and not meeting their standards. Let's talk a bit about brand perception, and that was one of the openers for the conversation that we had with Rob and his colleagues. In the research that we ran, and we actually did this the second time mid of last year, we asked respondents around the world to rate certain brands, a list of 100 global brands, based on how sustainable they perceive these brands. So again, this is not how sustainable these brands are, but this is how sustainable people perceive these brands. And we've run with a set of 100 consumer-facing brands. And as a starter, I'll just quickly show the complete ranking and give you a second to maybe find your brand. Maybe it's in there. I can't guarantee that. Say what is true for this particular ranking, but also lots of the other content that I'm sharing today. It's also available in our sustainability report on the website. So if this is too quick for you, it is publicly available. Let us take a look at the top 10 and the bottom 10, and certain things emerge quite intuitively. So, for instance, what really stood out to me immediately, maybe because of my engineering background as well, but the automotive industry is in general the worst performing industry in the entire ranking. So we included 8 automotive brands, and 7 of those were in the bottom 20 slots. The only exception is obviously Tesla. And if you look at the stock market, I think Tesla is valued at the complete valuation of the other OEMs combined. So not only necessarily because of the sustainability perception, obviously, but it's really standing for a change in an industry that has profound implications and is profoundly important for just how everyday life works. Another interesting insight here is that even though automotive is the worst performing industry overall, there were 2 countries where the perception was less bad than in other countries. And maybe not so surprisingly, that's actually the United States and Germany. Guess why? The second thing that I'd like to mention is that we saw that media and tech companies perform exceptionally well. So we see that in the top 10 only is Discovery, Netflix, Google, and also Spotify. What we see is that the more real or perceivable, the more real the products or services of these companies become, the worse the rating. So if you, for instance, combine Google with Apple or Amazon, Apple ranking on 47, Amazon on 64. Our interpretation of this is that purely digital and thus invisible services is something that people do not associate with being not sustainable, even though that the internet overall has an insane CO2 consumption or carbon footprint. It's guessed that by 2025, around 5% of the global energy consumption will be required to just fuel the web and digital services, and hence the implications are huge, right? But as of now, consumers are not really aware of that. And the third topic that I'd like to highlight is that the performance and that's a bit rough, yes, but in the FMCG, food, and also fashion, there's a huge diversity. So individual brands really manage to stand out, whereas others perform very, very, very poorly. So, for instance, what we see, and I've seen that there are participants from Danone as well. 3 of the top 10 brands in this ranking are actually from the Danone company, namely Danone itself, but also Evian and Activia. This was quite surprising for us, to be honest. We wondered whether this might be an interchangeable use of healthy and sustainable, because all of these products are all of these brands are also associated with being healthy. And what really surprised us is that in one of the rankings of Greenpeace, for instance, Danone explicitly was mentioned as one of the top 10 companies globally with the largest plastic footprint in the world. So this is something that, for instance, in terms of packaging and packaging of drinks, I will also talk a bit more about Coca-Cola later, but even Red Bull is very going into this direction, being perceived very, very unsustainably. So that's something that surprises us. But yeah, great brand reputation on that end. We see that fashion performs very, very poorly as well. I think the fast fashion industry has been is highly debated anyway. And yeah, as I said, packaging for very metal heavy, not heavy metal, but metal heavy packaging for Red Bull, for instance, and also Tassimo, which is a coffee brand comparable to the Nespresso cups. So heavy packaging, high share of waste in the actual product experience is something that people do associate with being very unsustainable. Again, the entire ranking, and that's what I want to look into next. There are interesting differences between individual countries, and I want to share a few more highlights about that. So I talked about Coca-Cola already, and in an earlier version of this index, we found that Coca-Cola landed actually on the global rank of 66. But in the very country of India, it was the very last rank of 100 when we ran this end of 2019, early 2020. And if you remember, earlier in the talk, I said that being environmentally sustainable in India means saving fresh water and reducing the water impact. We found that in 2016 and onwards, there was a huge media coverage and huge media criticism against Coca-Cola because they were charged with groundwater depletion and also pollution of groundwater. So this had a tremendous impact on the brand perception of Coca-Cola in the country of India. On a similar and maybe even comparable note, we see that the brand Nestlé, with a global rank of 21, was just made it to the rank of 42 in Germany. And we see that as I said, I'm dialing in from Berlin. I'm German myself. It's something that everyone in my family and all my friends can, in a way, relate to, because in Germany, a documentary with the name of Bottled Life got serious media attention a couple of years ago, where it was basically around the same narrative of groundwater depletion and usage of natural resources for profit that really made it to the general brand perception of Nestle in Germany, but not so much around the world. And it's really interesting to see this reflect in the data, if you ask me personally. We see something else that we call the home country advantage. So Coca-Cola, for instance, is in the latest version of the ranking on 83, but in the US, it's one of the top sustainable brands, ranking on rank 14. Same is true for the Netherlands, where Philips makes it to rank 6, whereas globally it's ranked as 26. And even VW in Germany makes it to rank 68, whereas on the global ranking, it's one of the worst performing brands overall. And in particular, VW is, for me, again, as a German, as an engineer, quite stunning, because just half a year earlier, we had the exact opposite effect. So as I said, in mid last year, VW made to rank 68 versus 96 globally. And 6 months earlier, it was globally on rank 86. And in Germany, it was even worse than that. So the PR and marketing team of VW did an exceptionally well and great job in Germany, apparently. Something, Rob?
Yes, sorry, it was one question from Elena who's saying knowledgeable. Is that defined as actually having the scientific knowledge, or those who perceive themselves as having the knowledge?
Yeah. We don't make a quiz out of our surveys, but we ask people to identify whether they talk to friends and family about sustainability, so that they engage with the topic overall. And we also ask them to self-identify as they know more than their peers about sustainability. So overall, yes, it's market research and it's basically audience segmentation, but these people report themselves to know topics about sustainability and to really engage about sustainability with their peers.
And one other, if you don't mind, Christoph, sorry to interrupt you, but Rosa asks, she's surprised to see Corona performing so poorly given the activation, beach cleanup, etc. Do you have any insights or thoughts on why that might be?
Corona in the global ranking? Was that the question?
Yes, I believe so. Yep, 69. Yeah.
On top of my head,
maybe we can come back separately if you don't know. Yep, that's fine. Yep.
Happy to get back to that. Let me quickly jump through this. So we talked about the very successful rebranding of VW in Germany. Another interesting note is that brand perception strongly varies between generations. So both mobility companies, Uber, perceived very sustainably within the young audience, but very unsustainable in the older age groups. Whereas Audi, for instance, the car manufacturer, is perceived as very unsustainable with the young peers. Surprisingly so, if you map this with Mercedes-Benz, they are also perceived very unsustainably in the medium and in the older age groups, but perceived quite above average sustainable in the younger age groups. So having worked for Audi in the past, I would wonder, why is that actually the case? What does Mercedes do well with these younger age groups than Audi? Yeah, I would follow up on that if I were them. Another topic, and I talked through the 4 sustainability audiences before, we see that also the brand perception depends on how informed consumers are. And yeah, thanks again for the question. These are people who report themselves to know and engage with sustainability, who also read a lot, who really just keep themselves informed. And what we see that, for instance, Adidas and also Amazon are quite medium for the lesser so informed target groups, but the more people actually know about plastic, about solutions, about pollution, about the working ethics and working standards as Amazon, the worse their performance. And the opposite is true for, I think, one of the poster child brands in terms of sustainability. The more people engage with sustainability, the higher they rate brands like Patagonia. So yeah, getting to the end of my presentation, what's next? This is not an opportunity for me to blamelessly advertise our sustainability tracker, but I'd like to suggest that you start with 3 questions. We've seen that most of the audience have actually started going the first steps in their sustainability journey. But these are 3 questions that I would recommend, that we would propose asking yourself and also your company. First is, who is actually defining the sustainability agenda in your organization? Is it the financial or the legal department, or is it actually the subject matter experts on external effects in terms of the organization's external effects on the planet and external stakeholders, the people? Is this driven by what consumers perceive as important? How is your brand perceived in terms of the issues that the customers care about? And then it's 2021, what's the approach for the next decade? Is it more of the same as in the past, or is there actually a congruent, conclusive plan how to do things better in this new decade? And with that, I'm close to the end of my presentation. We have one more thing that I'd like to just quickly introduce. We cannot see in person today, so we decided to bring a short virtual giveaway. And we, before answering the poll, we would run a short survey in 3 countries, and you have basically the opportunity to select the topic. We will, you're asked to cast your vote, and then you will receive the results to the survey via email after the event. And the 3 topics that we propose is, one is, it's January, it's still early in the year, asking people about sustainable New Year's resolutions, whether whether this actually translates into plans to be more, probably not less, maybe even less sustainable in the new year. The second one is a bit driven through the German lens, but we know that also in other countries there are important elections coming up. And the question is whether sustainability or the sustainability agenda is something that people consider casting their political vote, and how this actually influences their political decision making. And the third one, we want to ask whether people actually give corporates a credible, believe in the credibility of corporates when tackling the sustainability topic, or whether it's something that is actually left for startups as actually a good entry point for startups. So can corporates credibly become sustainable or not, or is it actually something that the startups have to do? These are the 3 options. You're invited to vote.
Now, if everyone's had a chance, and Hannah, if we have a decent response, it'd be great if you could pull up the results. Okay, so sustainability, credibility, startups versus corporates, and in fact, I know that was similar results to the one we had this morning. So we look forward to your work, Latana, on that one, Christoph.
Yeah, sure. For the 8 people who selected something different, if you still want to make your option win, you can go into our social media channels and vote there. The voting is also public there, and maybe encourage your colleagues to jump in. So we might be able to turn this around, but we are also fine to run this with this particular option. Yeah, and thank you
Terrific.
for your attention. Thanks for Rob, Joanna, Hannah for having us. Looking forward to the questions.
Really good job, Christoph. I had a question lined up, but I think you kind of answered it within the within your session. So we're listening to some of our senior marketers. They were talking about you said people vote with their wallets and 51% are willing to pay more. I think some finding that that's perhaps a bit of a challenge, and actually the sort of stated intent of consumers when it comes to spending more perhaps doesn't correlate to action necessarily. But who was the source of the information? You said Stern, was it, that you worked with on?
Yeah, so part of our research is inspired from conversations that we had with the NYU Stern Center for Sustainable Business. And they proved that, as I mentioned in the talk earlier, that sustainable options outperform in terms of growth rate non-sustainable ones quite significantly. The other part, yeah, as I said, we as a market research and public opinion company, we are dependent on what people actually report themselves. And as I said, it's not only our own data, but it's actually, I think if you ever read about public findings in terms of sustainability and sustainability behaviors of people, I think basically all studies confirm that every second person is willing to pay more. And yes, this is only self-reported, but we see these products growing, these categories growing. So there has to be truth in it.
Okay, terrific. And I know there's other sources of information showing growth of certainly of purposeful brands, if not sustainable. So a couple of questions here from our members. This one's pretty pertinent to what we shared at the start from Mr. or Ms. Anonymous. Some say that client marketers are behind the broader marketing industry and even their own organizations when it comes to getting their heads around sustainability because of the pressure of quarterly reporting, financial pressure, so short-termism. In some cases, does Christoph agree with this? And feel free to tell the truth. We'd be curious to hear what you think.
I think there's truth in there. So I just today actually I read, and referring back to the poster child brand in terms of sustainability, Patagonia, where the new head of Patagonia in Germany said they do not want to grow anymore. Because they do not want to increase their revenue, because they know that the climate crisis and also just the environmental crisis is real. So it's time to say no to more growth. And that's something that investors, capital markets, CEOs don't want to hear, right? I think this plays a bit into the direction of whether corporates can actually credibly be and fight for sustainability. I think it's a challenge. It's a question, how do companies actually measure success, right? If it's about growth and profitability, or whether it's about any other measure of improving people's lives. And with the given metrics that most companies are led by, I think it's going to be a challenge. Yes, sure.
And do you see sometimes in our membership, you see that family-owned companies are able to look at it a little bit longer term. Do you know if there's a sort of correlation in your index to companies that are perhaps family-owned?
That's an interesting angle. I can't answer that from top of my head. I do not want to. I don't want to guess here.
Putting you on the spot there. Thanks for your question. There's another one here. It's quite long, so bear with me. So there's obviously some disconnect between consumer perceptions of companies and companies' sustainability credentials as reported by NGOs. Is it your view that too many marketers are still in the mindset of marketing their sustainability creds rather than getting serious about improving their sustainability performance, i.e. there's too much greenwashing? Obviously a hot topic for us as an advertising association. But
I think greenwashing is exactly the right keyword there. I think what the public in general is very good at these days is detecting greenwashing and also just very openly pushing back against that. I think there are plenty of examples where this has not worked out so well for companies. But I think one of the challenges is the role of sustainability in the organization, right? So if you treat sustainability as a marketing topic, the marketer has no choice than greenwash what is happening. But if sustainability is like an ingrained effort of all functions, from sourcing and procurement to manufacturing to HR even, then stories naturally emerge that are worth sharing and that are credible and that are mission-driven communication of the brand of the company. And I think these are the stories that are quite successful. I mean, one of the top examples is, and you can think about Tesla what you want, because it's automotive and electric vehicles and batteries, and that's whether this is actually a clean technology. But the mission they are telling to just accelerate the transition to renewable energy is something that people can relate to. And yeah, I think it really comes down to whether sustainability is a subtask of brand communication, and thereby obviously subject to greenwashing or endangered of becoming greenwashing, or whether it's deeply rooted in the organization. And there are different companies who tackle it differently. I think that's fair to say.
Oh, that's terrific. Thank you. Christoph, we're out of time. You said 45 to 50 minutes, and we're pretty much bang on that. Thank you so much. If you don't mind, Hannah, as an account, one more question. Actually, we might have time for that. But yeah, please register your feedback there as a accountable organization. We like to get your input. There's one here from Michael, and I'm just reading this off the cuff. Hi, Christoph, great insights. When do you think the digitalization and their hunger for energy will get into the consumer's mind? Not sure I understand that question. When do you think the digitalization and their hunger for energy will get into the consumer's mind?
I think the question relates to what I said earlier about invisible services and that are being perceived as quite sustainable. I think
I see with the platforms. And yes, I see what you mean. Yeah.
And I think same is true as for groundwater depletion, plastic pollution, climate change, CO2 emissions. If people start talking about it and raise awareness for the issue, then it's going to become a topic that people more consciously think about. Maybe it's enough to not watch Netflix on Ultra HD, but rather on, I don't know, SD, not even sure what SD stands for, but a lower resolution. This has an impact on the data that needs to be transmitted, and hence is like an energy sustainable option. I think transparency, communicating about it is the key, as for most other sustainability issues that we've discussed today. When this will happen, I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, if you can get your crystal ball out for the next one, please, that would be no, but seriously, as just said, terrific insights, and thank you so much for agreeing to share and letting us use your information to inform our own approach. So just say thank you to Hannah and to Joanna, Danila, my colleagues working on this project, and to you, Christoph, and all our members for joining. So have a good rest of day wherever you are in the world, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.